Good morning and welcome to This Week. Hey, Scott.
Hey, everybody. Good morning, Revolution.
Good morning, Revolution. Langston Hughes lives. You know, I got to read that poem one of these days live on the show.
Oh, that's a great idea. We should definitely do that.
Yeah, we should. Actually, we should do a poem a week.
Yeah.
Oh, you got a mask. You're socially distancing from me. That's a little
They're still very socialistically close, Joe.
Yeah, socialistically close, right? Everybody do a socialistically close. By the way, stream. How do you call it when you
Watch party.
watch party? Hold a watch party. Don't be shy. Spread the socialist. Well, Scott.
People are at home.
People are at home and they ain't got nothing to do. So invite your friends. Spread, the ideological struggle, which is what we're conducting here. Very important,
Yep. Billboard you see sometimes in Cuba with a quote from Fidel that says, ideas are the weapons of the revolution.
There's one of them, and I got on my weapon. You see, I got on my People Before Profit shirt. Everybody see that?
Yep.
Go to cpusa.org to the our little store. It's in the slider. Order one today. Make a political statement. And speaking of which, I saw you got a red mask. Well,
so yeah, we're doing something called the May Day Challenge.
Okay.
So this year we can't show our solidarity in the usual ways, but we still have to show our solidarity with unemployed people, with the workers on the front lines of this, with undocumented people, especially undocumented workers who are excluded from all of the relief measures.
Yeah.
So we're asking people to, make a mask that shows your pride, your solidarity. This is a cloth mask that I made. It's not too hard. Got a couple layers. We'll put up some instructions on our Facebook page. If making masks isn't your thing, make a sign. Record a
Put it
short.
on. Let's see how it looks. Who is that masked man?
Yeah, I've always kind of envied the folks that turn up to protest with their their masks and hoodies and whatever. But obviously, I'm not going to do that.
No.
Kind of now I can wear a mask, and it's
very nice, very nice. So the May Day Challenge, we want it by the 26th.
28th.
Picture 28th. Take a picture of yourself, do a little video. We're going to show it. We're going to represent. May Day is coming up.
Yep.
And one of the questions I have been asking is, what are we going to do in order to demonstrate our support for May Day, for the workers? How are we organizing? Just because we're stuck inside, that don't mean that we can't organize. We can, we must. There are all kinds of protests going on in Los Angeles. Hospital workers are protesting. Immigrant rights groups are protesting. Caravans are being organized all over the country. Nurses are, stepping out. Workers at Amazon are on strike. Whole Foods, they're having stay-at-homes. In fact, there's kind of a strike wave taking place in the country, Scott. But there is also danger on the right. Did you see what happened in Lansing, Michigan?
Yeah, that band of crazies who showed up demanding that that the restrictions and the stay-at-home orders be lifted.
Right.
But I sort of understand it in a certain sense, because look, capitalism trains people to think that their ability to survive comes from their job, right? We depend on jobs for all of our basic necessities, our healthcare, food, housing. So it's in a certain sense a normal response to say we want to get back to work, we want to get back to business, we want to start drawing a salary again. But there's a real difference between, I was thinking of this the other day, there's a real difference between the the communist approach and the fascist approach, I guess I would call them, to that question, because the communists support workers. We support whatever benefits them, whatever improves their lives. Whereas fascists, if you look at their way of organizing, speaking, it's all about work. They glorify work, and that's a very different thing. Our call is for things that improve the living standards of working people, that enable them to survive this crisis, not just getting people back to work. That just makes profits for capital.
I don't know how much work Trump and his cohorts in the alt-right actually do, but I understand your portraying of the sentiment that people are. But it's not so normal to show up with a swastika.
No, that is
flag and an AK.
That I had not seen the swastikas. I just saw
chanting "Lock her up."
Mm-hmm.
Lock her up, lock her. And by the way, the Comrades in Michigan wrote a wonderful statement about what happened in Michigan the other day. And this group is connected somehow to the Secretary of Education, DeWine, is that her name?
DeVos.
Her DeVos. And don't you know they got a Facebook group, Scott, with 350,000 people in it from Michigan. Michiganers against stay at home or something like that, it's called. In fact, there's a whole movement being organized on Facebook, a number of different states, New York, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Oklahoma, you name it. So they're trying to, and the right wing is now, the pundits like Dr. Phil and that other first name doctor and the Fox News commentators are now polemicizing against the stay at home, saying that it's all a bunch of nonsense. We need to restart the economy. And so what if the greatest generation dies?
And again, this is, you see the way in which the right is kind of parasitic upon the ideas and the slogans of the left, right? Because working people are being hurt by this thing, right? And they're taking that pain, and instead of giving the right response to it, which is we're going to help workers, it's we need to get rid of all these measures that are being put in place to control things. Instead of doing more for workers, we need to do less. And they're trying to put this working class veneer on what's really an incredibly hateful, dismissive, reactionary policy. And it's their typical way of acting.
Fascist danger is growing. Fascist danger is growing. Trump said, I'm in control, totally in control. Did you hear?
In Wisconsin, and then in Wisconsin, forcing the elections to occur as planned instead of either postponing or doing mail-in.
And you lost anyway.
Yeah.
So there, they lost anyway. But it was a very dangerous effort on their part. And they're trying to use legislative and administrative mechanisms to restrict democracy so that they can smooth the way to God knows what, And part of the plan right now is, okay, let people go back to work. So what if people die? There'll be a second wave. There'll be an abatement of the crisis in the summer months, possibly because they really don't know how the disease works. Then there will probably be a resurgence in the fall, a second
around the elections.
Around the election. Then they'll say, oh no, we can't have the
elections. Yeah.
Or they'll try to force people to go in the most heavily populated areas, whereas in the rural areas, they have less populated, it's more sparse, more people will come out. They're trying to figure out some kind of machination to.
The important point here is that, there's I think there's still a lot of resistance to using the term fascism or
Yes,
fascist.
he said authoritarian.
There are people in our government, many of them, who support fascism, who want the complete destruction of all democratic institutions, the dictatorial control, the full, violent. How did Dimitrov? The violent, terroristic dictatorship of the most reactionary section of capital. This is
Yeah.
real. It is a very real danger.
We don't have it now yet. We don't have it. There's space to struggle, which is really important.
And they're trying to restrict that space.
They're trying to restrict that space. And so the point that Georgy Dimitrov makes in his report to the Seventh Congress of the Comintern, he says fascism, it would be wrong to not understand that fascism is the substitution of one form of government for another. It's not a normal transition. And he said not to see that would be a big mistake, because why? It'll restrict people's ability to build a wide movement if you think it's already happened, But he said it's equally important now to fight against these attempts to restrict democratic liberties in the preparatory stages. So both of them are dangers. But you know what I don't like about the term authoritarian, Scott? It's classless.
Yeah.
Classless. They talk about China, authoritarian, Xi. They talk about Cuba, authoritarian. They talk about Hungary, authoritarian.
These are very different
Social systems based on very different ideas, very different structures of democracy, actually, if you want to know the truth. And they're not the same. And so when you don't call it what it is, you're confusing people, and that's disarming, in my opinion.
The word that for me goes with that is populism, which is the other side, because they have this. When I say they, I mean sort of the ruling class pundits, commentators, have this habit of saying that populism leads to, like, anti-elite sentiment leads to authoritarianism, and the whole thrust of the argument is to blame the rise of fascism on working class people, working class right-wing voters. Okay. When in fact,
Scott, you're kind of confusing me a little bit, because you guys are saying on the one side there's a fascist danger, and now you're talking about this populism issue, and at the same time you're saying it's a socialist moment. So which is it? Is it a fascist danger and the main issue is democracy, or is it a socialist moment? I mean, clear that up for me.
I think if you look at how to put it, thinking like a Marxist means looking at what's new, what's developing, what's growing. What's growing right now are two separate political forces. On the right, a fascist danger that's increasingly organized, increasingly powerful, and on the left, an increasingly organized, united, powerful working class and socialist movement, reflected in Bernie's performance in the primaries, but also in the strike wave. And in between these two things, you have this whole array of forces called moderate, center, whatever, who are still very prominent, but no longer have ideological dominance or ideological leadership. People don't look to them anymore as...
Wait a minute, hold up, slow down, stop right there where you are. Your homeboy, Joe Biden, won the Democratic primary. Isn't he a centrist? How can you say the center cannot hold?
But Bernie was right. The left won the ideological struggle. Look at, all of the stuff that, for the left section of the Democratic Party and for the left broadly, those priorities, Medicare for all, support for workers, that stuff is now not only mainstream, it's what the whole Democratic Party pushed for in its response to COVID, expanding medical care, expanding unemployment, right? Biden knows that he can't win without the left. Yes,
But Biden doesn't support Medicare for all. Didn't your homie say that if it came on the Resolute desk and he was president, that he would veto it?
Yeah.
I mean, and isn't he talking about working with maybe even selecting a Republican for his vice presidential?
Yeah.
He gave that up.
I mean, yeah, if we
Oh,
look at Biden as an individual, then yeah, he's, you know, I'm trying to find a non-rude way to say it.
We're talking about more than Biden as an individual because, millions of people voted for him in the last several weeks. Bernie's electoral base constricted, actually, didn't expand. And now, was that because they thought that Biden was a more viable candidate, more electable, or was it because they disagreed with the
I was actually going to ask you that question.
Anti-monopoly? I think it was a mixed bag. I think it was a mixture of things. Like African Americans are not anti-left. In fact, they're the most pro-left group in the country, y'all. But I think that we concluded, not me personally, I supported Bernie, just so you know. But I think people concluded that Biden was more electable, and therefore, in this moment, that the main issue was defeating Trump. In any event, we're not endorsing anybody. We're focusing on the issues. The issues right now is addressing this terrible crisis, support for the unemployed workers in the first place, support for those populations that are most severely affected by the crisis, support for the hospital workers and all the other frontline workers, support for people who can't pay rent, I just read that boy who snitched on Trump, not that I'm not mad at him, his lawyer, what was his name? Trump's lawyer who went to jail. Michael what?
Michael Cohen?
The boys got out of jail. Can you believe that? Thousands, hundreds of thousands, Black, Latino, white workers, men, women are locked up, and he gets out of jail. And then that lawyer for Stormy Daniels,
Avenatti, yeah,
he's out. This is a rich man. It's a bourgeois world, man. It's a bourgeois town, ain't it?
Yeah.
Scott.
And
that's why we need revolution, man.
We do. And getting back to the question of unemployment, we Marxists, I think, have a slightly different understanding of it than what you get from the regular media or the regular sources. What do we think of unemployment? What is its role? What is its?
Well, Marx describes it as the reserve army of the unemployed. They're workers, and it's important to understand that unemployed people are workers, and they're not a subclass, they're not the underclass, There's a working class, and there's a ruling class, and then there's people who are in the middle, small shopkeepers, some professionals, that kind of thing. But the definition of a worker is a man or a woman who has to sell their ability to work, who don't have no property.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about property, I'm talking about, banks, factories, means of production. You got to sell your ability to work in order to survive.
That doesn't change if you happen to be if you find a buyer for it or not at any given time.
Exactly. And whether or not you have a buyer, that's the key question, because the unemployed exist as a section of the working class to depress the wages of ordinary workers, because you can always threaten. That's why you can always threaten to lay them off and bring in a scab. That's why you need unions. That's why workers are forced to collectively combine, collectively bargain in order to confront the bosses. And that's one of the big parts, elementary elements of what? The class struggle. class.
And from the point of view of the capitalist class, the unemployed play a very necessary role. That's what allows them to, they're all about flexible production, right? You don't want to make anything extra, expend any extra effort. So you
Yeah.
expand and shrink your workforce to suit your needs at a given time. So the unemployed, in fact, are playing a very important role in the profit making ventures of capital, and should be, and on that title alone deserve compensation.
Indeed, indeed. This is Political Economy 101, folks. If this is the first time you've heard it, it will not be the last time. And by the way, we're having a school for party members coming up next week on, what is it, Thursday or Friday?
Saturday, May 25th and Saturday, May 2nd.
You can write to us at cpusa@cpusa.org if you're interested and you're a member. Sign up. We're going to be talking about, it's going to be 2 consecutive weeks, right? Friday and a Saturday.
Saturday afternoons.
And, some basics of the thinking of Marx, Engels, and Lenin, and Gus Hall, Henry Winston, and Scott Hiley.
The focus of right now in our socialist moment, in this pandemic and the crisis, how do we build the power of the working class? How do we move toward
the most
socialism?
Decisive issue. And that's going to be it for this week, Scott. So stay healthy, stay safe, stay physically distant, but socially, communally, socialistically close.
And remember, send your masks, or if you want masks, signs, if you want to record a short piece of music, poem, whatever, show your May Day solidarity. Send it to us at discussion@cpusa.org. We're going to publish the results on the websites and social media, and our editors will select a winner for special recognition.
Peace out, y'all.
Sei gesund, stay healthy, comrades.
Bye-bye.